So if we haven't met yet, my name is Caleb, and it's such an honor to be your children's pastor. And for the next 2 weeks, Pastor Robbie and I, we're going to talk about something that I believe is more important today than it's ever been. We're going to look at what the Bible says about family, and today specifically, we're going to look at what the Bible says about parents. Now, I'm not big on watching the Olympics, maybe you are, but one of the craziest Olympic sports to me is Olympic curling. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically shuffleboard with a bigger stone and a handle on it and people sweeping. That's it. That's all it is. And they guide the stone down and it looks like fun, but watching some of the people that do it makes me think that anyone can compete in Olympic curling. It doesn't take a whole lot of athletic ability to be able to sweep. And I feel like any of us could just get off the couch and go do some Olympic curling. So, to guide the stone exactly where you want it to go might take a little bit of skill and a little bit of knowledge, but it doesn't take a whole lot of ability to be able to do that. And the same is true for parenting. Anyone can become a parent. It doesn't take a lot of skill for someone to become a parent, but it does take a little bit of wisdom and discernment to lead a family who loves one another and serves and encourages one another and raise kids whose lives are characterized by the fruits of the Spirit, who live lives that are full of love and joy, patience and kindness, who enjoy doing good and they're faithful to the Lord. Kids who are gentle with people and live lives of self-control when they're bombarded with ways to cave in to peer pressure on a daily basis. That is a difficult task, but it's also one that with a little understanding and wisdom can be accomplished. And I know it can be accomplished because I've met a lot of you and I've seen some of the ways that you lead your family and the way your kids have grown up and accomplished big things and have great families of their own. And I love it when you share some of your wisdom with other parents, myself included, because I'm not a great parent. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I made my daughter cry. And I can't remember what I said, but I'll never forget her response. Through her tears, she said, "Dad, you're way too hard on us." And it made me think, man, maybe I am a little bit too hard on my kids. And so it made me grow as a parent and kind of reevaluate the way I communicate with them. And so my daughter is incredibly smart and she's analytical and she loves to read as a third grader, and I love that. And I have to grow as a parent to better lead her in this stage of her life and mine. But one of the biggest things I've learned as a parent, and what I hope you leave today knowing, is that whether you're currently a parent or one day in the future will be a parent, or if you've already raised kids, whatever stage you're in, this is true. That there is no way to be a perfect parent. But if we commit ourselves to being purpose-driven parents, God will make it enough. He'll fill in the gaps where we lack. See, parents, we're humans and we fail often. But if we commit to raising a generation who loves God and loves people and trusts that God will make up the parts where we lack, we believe our community and our future will be better because of it. There's no way to be a perfect parent, but there are 100 ways to be a good one. There are. And what better way to learn about becoming a better parent than from a couple whose child almost didn't make it to adulthood? That sounds like a great way to start, but because these parents, because of their quick thinking and absolute faith, they raised a child that completely changed the world. And what's even more significant is even though these parents, even though they raised an incredible child, they only get one line in all of the Bible. In Exodus 6, verse 20, it's the only place in the Bible where we learn the names of Moses' parents, Amram and Jochebed. Otherwise, we wouldn't know anything about them. But even though the Bible doesn't tell us a lot about them, we can learn a lot through their son Moses and the life that he lived. In fact, they might be some of the most important people in all of the Bible. And maybe you know their story, but if you don't, so much of the Old Testament in the Bible, it starts with them and what they did. You see, before Moses was born, the Israelites found themselves in a bad way. I mean, a bad way. There's a new king in Egypt, and he saw them growing and prospering, the Israelites, and he began to think of them as a threat. So he enslaved them and forced them into a life of hard labor. It got so bad that Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, gave an order to have all the Israelite babies who were boys killed and only let the girls live. And this is where we pick up in Exodus chapter 2. And it'll be on the screen for you if you don't have your Bibles today. And it says this in Exodus chapter 2, starting with verse 1. It says, "Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months." It's funny, when there's an ugly baby, you don't say anything. But when it's a good-looking baby, you got to point that out. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. And then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. And his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen. Then Pharaoh's daughter went to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw that the basket was among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of those Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother, of all people. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you for it." So not only did Moses get the privilege of having his mother take care of him, she also got paid for it. So the woman took the baby and nursed him, and when the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." You see, in an unlikely turn of events, baby Moses goes from facing death to being adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. And not only did he escape death, but his own mother was able to take care of him. And the Bible doesn't tell us kind of what happens in the meantime, but I can only imagine that in the process, Moses' parents were able to find every opportunity they could to instill in him who he really was. That although he might look like an Egyptian, although he might talk like an Egyptian and live like an Egyptian, he had a constant reminder of who he really was. That he was an Israelite, and the God of the Israelites was his God. And God's promise to his people to rescue them was also God's promise to Moses. And as it turned out, spoiler alert, that the child that Amram and Jochebed delivered would later deliver them and all of their people out of bondage and lead them into the land that God promised. He wasn't perfect. He made plenty of mistakes, just like us. But I love what the book of Hebrews says about Moses. This is almost like his eulogy after his life was over. And what an incredible one it would be for any of us. It's in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23. And it says it like this. It says, "By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw that he was no ordinary child. They knew there was something different about him. And they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he'd grown up, refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose instead to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasure of Egypt because he was looking ahead towards his reward." He denied the pleasures of Egypt because he knew there was a better way. And as a parent, one of the questions that I have to constantly wrestle with and ask myself is do my kids know there's a better way? That life may teach them one thing, but do they know there's another option? Do I demonstrate what it means to love God, to love people, and to serve others, or do my words not match my actions? I think our kids know that we're not perfect, that we're flawed, but as leaders of our home, they have to know that we're doing our very best to live lives that honor God. And though we may fail, that we forgive one another and move forward in grace. You see, Amram and Jochebed didn't have a perfect little family with a house on the hill. In fact, their son had the house on the hill, and they didn't even get to live in it. But they still found a way to live out Proverbs 22:6. And this is one of the key verses for us parents. It says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they'll not depart from it. And I love the use of the word train here because it implies this picture of an athlete training for a competition. I mean, I get winded sometimes just from tying my shoes, but I've seen people practice for marathons, and though I would probably never do it, it looks like one of the worst pains in the world. But don't miss this. In the same way that an athlete and teams train for competitions, we have the opportunity to train a child to be successful in this life and hopeful for all eternity. And success meaning that they're living out that dream and using the gifts that God has given them. And for Moses, that meant leaving a life of luxury in the palace because he knew God's promise to rescue his people and believed that he could make a difference. And I have full confidence that the reason that he believed he can make a difference is because his parents instilled that in him at a young age. And just like Moses' parents, we too have a chance to help a child know who they are in Christ, that God made them and that he loves them, and that he has a plan and a purpose for their lives, and they can achieve it no matter how big of a dream it is. And I hope they have huge God-sized dreams in their hearts that we can empower them to accomplish. And not only that, but they can also know that no matter what happens in this life, that God is with them. And that one day they'll spend eternity in heaven with him if they simply believe in him. This is the ultimate goal of parenting. For kids to be successful in this life and hopeful for all eternity because they know Jesus. Now, it's not wrong to want to have perfectly behaved kids. I don't think anyone denies that, or smart kids who can get into any college they want. These are great things. But what's even better than that is creating a home environment full of grace, where our kids want to be with us and each other, even when they don't have to be. See, building a family that lasts doesn't happen on accident. It has to be done on purpose and for a purpose. And if you're like me, that sounds great, but the bigger question is, how do we do that? How does that practically look for us today? And to better answer this question, I think it's important to understand the different stages that kids go through and how to better interact with them at every stage in the process. Whether you have kids or not, this is true. And so one of the biggest shifts when it comes to being purpose-driven parents is emphasizing honor over obedience. Honor over obedience. It's one of the great commandments, right? Honor your father and mother. And so it might seem contradictory when you just want your kids to behave, but it's better to emphasize honor over obedience. We don't follow rules because mom or dad said so. We honor one another because we want our family to be together. And doing things that dishonor one another breaks the relationships that we have as a family. And we're going to do everything we can to protect those relationships. So when we have a family environment without honor, it becomes an exhausting game of catch me if you can. Instead, if we create a culture that honors one another with our families, where we love and serve and give to one another, that's where the foundation of a healthy family is formed. This is where we build families that last. And this means that we have to be tough early on with things that can break a relationship. There are lots of things that can do that, but I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 things that can break a relationship. And I think these are so good. And as parents, these are things that we have to jump on quickly. I didn't come up with these, but I think they're just so good when it comes to the family dynamic. So 3 things that can break a relationship: disobedience, dishonesty, and disrespect. And the way we handle each of these is different based on the stage we're in as a family. And if you have younger children, you deal with dishonesty differently than you would if you have teenagers. And if you're a parent, you've dealt with all of these in some form or fashion. In fact, I heard a story recently about a family who had a teenage son. And I think he was just old enough to drive on his own. And one day he disrespected his mother, which is a big no-no. And when his father heard about it, instead of grounding him or taking away his phone or his car or some other typical form of punishment, the father did something that I think was a great idea. When the son got home, the father made him buy his mother flowers, dress up, and take his mother out on a date with his own money and apologize to her. And in the process, they were able to talk at dinner and restore the relationship that was broken because of the son's disrespect towards her. I don't have a teenager yet, but I'm definitely putting that one in my back pocket for when my kids are older. But the way we discipline our kids changes depending on what stage they're in. And so when dealing with children, there are 4 main stages that we'll go through with our kids. And so these aren't in the Bible, but I think all wisdom comes from God anyway, and these are certainly helpful if you are a parent currently. So the 4 stages of parenting. We have the discipline years, which is 0 to 5. And this is where we're teaching kids that there are consequences to their actions. If you put your hand on a hot stove, you'll get burnt. And in this stage, we just need them to obey. And if they don't obey, they might get hit by a car or hurt themselves in one way or another. And we can't reason with them yet, but we want them to know that there are consequences related to their behavior. So Eric and I have a 5-year-old son that's in this stage right now. And he constantly pushes the limits of what he can and can't do. And although that's probably true of most kids, but those 3 things that break the relationship are so important in this stage: the disobedience, the dishonesty, and the disrespect. And if there's anything we need to jump on quickly in this stage, it's those 3 things. And this is what we're not going to tolerate as a family, because these are the things that can damage our relationships. And as a result, the culture and the health of our family. So we'll say sometimes, Axel, that's disrespectful to your sister, or that's disobedient to your mother, or that's why you're getting a spanking. We want him to know now that while the stakes are low, that there's consequences to every decision that he makes. And it's important for him to think about what he says and does. And if he does these things when he's older and the stakes are a lot higher, the consequences will be even worse. And so we want to drill that in as early as possible. And this is the right stage to do that. So the discipline stage is the first stage. After that comes the training years, age 5 to 12. And the training years are a little different. This is where we start to put the why behind the what. They can start to reason a little, so we start to explain why we do what we do. You don't run out in the road without looking because a car might not see you. We're explaining while we're training. And it doesn't mean that we're not disciplining anymore. We're just doing it a little differently. And this is where you get asked the why question 1,000,000 times over and over. And it's absolutely draining. But what's fun about this stage is you can start asking the why question back. And I found out that a lot of times you'll be surprised with the answers. Instead of answering the question that you're asked, you can respond with a question. I love using the phrase, hey, what do you think about that? And just listening to see what happens. And psychologists say that this is the stage where most kids form their worldview and the way they see the world around them. So we have to leverage this stage to the best of our ability to help them grow into young men and young women who are compassionate and caring, who love God and love one another. Every child is different, but this is a key stage in a child's life and one that really has to be led with lots of wisdom and prayer. The training years are key. And after that comes the coaching years, 12 to 18. And this is where we're kind of standing on the sideline as they start to make their own independent decisions. We're trying to help them break down the important decisions and steer them on the right path moving forward. We might yank them off the field sometimes, but we're moving towards connecting rather than always correcting like in the training years. And in this stage, kids will experience the natural consequences for their actions. So if you don't study for a test, you'll get a bad grade. And I'm not in this stage yet, but I've learned, if I've learned anything, talking to kids and our student volunteers, is when they tell you something, don't freak out. If you completely freak out when they tell you something, whether it's good or bad, they're just going to shut down and not tell you things anymore. And so whether it's good and you get really excited or it's bad and you get angry, put on your best poker face and just keep them talking as long as they will. That's the key in this stage, is just to simply continue the conversation. You want your kids to talk about anything and everything, and whatever you can do to foster that conversation is great. And the problem is when we think these are teachable moments at this stage and we try to teach, we just get the eye roll and eventually they just stop. So when they tell you the most horrific information about their friends or something that happened, just keep them talking. Ask questions to kind of dig a little deeper into what they think about the situation. Wow, that must have been really scary, or man, that sounds like it was painful, was it? Or different things like that to help dig in a little bit to what they think about what happened. The don't freak out rule is huge at this stage. And if you think back to your childhood, and if there was something that you didn't tell mom or dad, it was probably because you thought that they would make a big deal out of it and lecture you, or you would get in a lot of trouble. And it certainly doesn't mean to ignore it, but you can circle back later when you've thought through it a little more about how to respond. And the goal is to simply just keep them talking and not shut down, which is so easily done and not so easily undone. So the fourth and final stage, and this is where we all want to be eventually, is the friendship years, 18 plus. It'll be an amazing day when my kids can make their own living and support themselves and no longer rely on mom and dad for everything. I dream about that day, and it sounds like a lot of you have as well. But this stage is where we've done all the disciplining, all the training, and there may still be a little coaching involved, but we send them out into the world and get to reap the reward of all the hard work we put in over the previous years as we watch them take on all of life's challenges. So if you have perfectly behaved kids who don't want to be with you when they get older, that's not the win. Or if you have perfectly behaved kids who don't want to be with each other, that's not the win either. Or if you have kids who don't want to leave when it's time to leave, that's not good. Having children that behave is great, but more important is building a family culture where everyone wants to be together even when they don't have to be. And it's so much easier said than done. You see, sometimes whatever season of life we find ourselves in can seem like it's permanent. It can seem like this situation or phase of life is never going to change, but I and many of the people around you that might be a step or two ahead of you in life can assure you that things could change quickly for the better. Just like summer eventually turns to fall, your season in life will change. And you'll go from single to dating and maybe even marriage and children before you know it. And our tendency is to rush through and get from here to there as quickly as possible. But when it comes to raising this generation, it's so important to just slow down and look around for those moments where we can truly train and equip a child and build a family that lasts. And understanding the different stages of parenting is important for building families that stay connected forever. But to really narrow it down, there are 3 family practices that if we just implemented these 3 things in our families from today forward, that our families will be better. If we just practice these 3 biblical habits, this is where we can raise kids who can change the world, just like Moses. And so 3 healthy family habits. Number 1 is forgiveness. It's forgiveness. This is one of those things that's so much easier said than done too. In Romans 12:17, he says it like this. It says, repay no one evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. You see, there's lots of frustrating moments throughout the day or the week. But when it comes to those closest to us, sometimes they can get our worst. In Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul wrote how Christ has forgiven us on the cross. And because of that, we forgive just like we've been forgiven. But our pride sometimes can make that difficult. Sometimes we want to be angry, and that hurts us and those closest to us. In fact, the difference between unhealthy and toxic people is that toxic people don't want to get better. Unhealthy people do. And when someone says or does something hurtful, just take a deep breath and remember all the things that God has forgiven you for. And when you do, it's a little bit easier to get past those things that have happened to you. The phrase, I'm sorry, should be common language in your family. And if you want to move forward and build a family that lasts, forgiveness is an essential habit of a healthy family. Just simply saying, I'm sorry, and creating a family culture that does that as well is such a big, big deal. The second family habit is encouragement. Encouragement. Hebrews 10 says it like this. It says, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And this verse, of course, was written to the church at the time, but I think the same applies to the family as well. And I'm convinced that if you have kids, you should be their biggest cheerleader. Not in a way that embarrasses them on the ball field or will get them picked on by their friends, but in a way that encourages them to do their absolute best. They need to hear the words, I'm proud of you. You should say that often. And when you say these words to your child, it ignites something deep inside of them that nothing else can. So say it often. Life will bring them back down, but when they're around you, they should feel like they can hike Everest and cure cancer because you're constantly encouraging them to chase their dreams and attempt the impossible. Encouragement is one of the marks of a healthy family, especially when it comes from both mom and dad together. Encouragement is such a big deal in today's world. And third and finally, to create a healthy family culture, to build a family that lasts, prayer is an absolutely essential habit. In Matthew 6, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, and I love the way he says it. He says, and when you pray. And that's always been significant to me because the way he wrote it, he's expecting that we are going to pray. Not that, we're going to do our part. We, of course, do our part. But, and when you pray, portrays the fact that, hey, let's take this to God. Whenever we don't know what to do, we're not smart enough or wise enough, we can always ask God. And keeping the correct balance of working like it depends on you and praying like it depends on God isn't easy. But our kids need to see us pray, especially you fathers. When they see, your kids see their father submitting to their heavenly Father, it's a powerful thing. And it lays the groundwork to a lifetime of faith. And when it comes to prayer, our job is just simply model it, encourage it, and make it easy for them. So if you have younger kids, maybe just saying a quick prayer before bedtime. Or if you have older kids, letting them take turns praying around the dinner table or before their game or whatever that might be. When you parent with a purpose, finding little moments to instill in your child who they are in Christ and how they can impact the world around them makes all the difference. It worked with Moses. He had some pretty big failures along the way, and it cost him 40 years in the wilderness tending to sheep. But he never forgot who he was and who God is because he had parents who found a way to make sure he knew that. And what they lacked, God made up for. And history is different because of them. You see, you might not be able to change the world, but what if you can raise someone who does? And I know we have some single mothers who are trying to wear both hats, and you're doing the best you can, and I can't imagine what you're dealing with, but I do know that on days when you feel like you're not doing a good enough job or you feel like you're insufficient in some way, that God sees you. And thankfully, he makes up the difference where we lack as parents. And if you're here today and you're struggling through maybe trying to be a good parent and balancing spending time with your spouse, you're not alone. We're all in this together. And you can know that you're winning the parent game if your kids want to be around you and each other, even when they don't have to be. Or maybe your kids are grown and gone, but there's some brokenness in the relationship. Don't wait another day to restore the broken relationship and heal the wounds from the past. You can't change what happened, but you can absolutely change the future. Take them out for coffee or dinner, or just have a one-on-one conversation and just start mending the relationship. And though it may take time, there's no wound too deep that the Holy Spirit can't heal, but it's up to us to initiate that process. you can have a relationship with your kids where they want to be with you and together, each other, even when they don't have to be. But it starts with you as parents, setting that precedent in your family now, early on. We had kids write thank you cards. I think it was 2 weeks ago now, and so some of them, made funny things. They wrote, cards to their pets and things like that. That happens, but some of them took it serious too. And so I was walking around, just, kind of checking on them, seeing what they did. They could write a thank you card to their teacher or their parents or, someone who has impacted them. And one of the ones that really made me just pause for a minute was this boy who he held his up and let me read it. And it just said, to my foster parents, thank you. I love you so much. And to think of where this child might be without a family who had so much love that they brought him into their own. It's such a powerful thing. And I think it's just such a physical, tangible example of God's love for us, that we were once distant from his family, but because of Jesus, he's adopted us into his own. And what an incredible picture of that. And so whether you have kids or not, I think it's so important that every child knows that they can walk in faith, that we can teach them to walk in faith of who God is, that we can empower them to change the world, that we don't have to teach them to be fearful or disheartened, but hopeful that they can do something about the world around them. See, the Bible is filled with people who overcame great odds. Daniel could handle the lion's den. David could handle Goliath. Paul could handle persecution. And with God's help, Moses could handle Pharaoh. Your kids can handle whatever life throws at them as long as God is with them. So don't be scared for your children. Be honored that God would choose you to parent them. There's no way to be a perfect parent. There really isn't. But if we commit ourselves to being purpose-driven parents, God will make it enough. He really will.